Just got back from the gym. Hot as hell, but it felt good getting in a workout. I don't know why I have been like sleepy the past couple days, and getting to the gym was exactly what I needed. Now, moving forward, I just want to say right off the back that if people don't get back to work, you're going to see more of this stuff happen, right? McDonald's is testing automated drive-through ordering at 10 Chicago restaurants. And it's because they're more accurate. They don't call it sick, right? It says the technology 85% accurate and can take 80% of orders. So you don't need that many people, especially because labor is becoming more expensive, right? People don't want to work. Even companies looking for truck drivers are saying we're offering people 14,000 a week, which is kind of sus because that comes out to be like over 600,000 a year. But hey, when you're in a desperate situation, it comes. I mean, they're just going to pass all of it on to the American people, right? And just gonna have increases in price as wages become more expensive. The reality is that companies are just gonna pass all this stuff on to the customer, and you're the one that's gonna be left uh, paying the cost. Now, may seem somewhat controversial, especially in light of many of you have heard that the emails with Dr. Fauci, etc., right? And of course, that becomes now the talk of the town. All the YouTubers, etc., are talking about this. And what they really should be talking about is who actually told Dr. Fauci to lie. Because if you looked at, and I had posted some of these videos back in 2020, like in the middle of 2020, where Dr. Fauci himself, and on that 60-minute interview, when they asked him straightforwardly, they were like, should the Americans be wearing masks? And he explained everything very thoroughly about why the common individual should not buy a mask and wear a mask. And then of course that narrative changed after the fact, and this was all under Trump's watch, for everybody who is like, we need Trump back, and look at everything after Biden. But yet all of this began under Donald Trump and could have been stopped under Donald Trump. That's why, in my opinion, I don't think Donald Trump was anything more than a Trojan horse, someone to stir the people up. That was really the beginning of what started all the problems, the gaslighting of the American people, pitting Trumpers against non-Trumpers, etc. And that just fueled the hatred between Americans. You had Donald Trump, who incited racism against the Chinese people by constantly referring to the virus as the China virus. And of course, that was just to kind of throw the scent off the trail, as they say, to blame everything on China. And in my opinion, I don't believe that it was sent out by China. In my opinion, I believe America was the one who orchestrated the releasing of this virus upon the world. I mean, realistically speaking, America produces nothing except debt. America produces nothing. You can just look at the numbers in terms of exports versus imports, right? America doesn't export anything. We import everything. And what do we give people? We give people pieces of paper with green ink on it and a number and a dollar sign on it, and a numerical value on it. And they say, if you don't take it, well, we'll go to war with you, right? So who really is the one in charge? People keep saying China is in charge and China is going to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, bro, America is exporting inflation to China. Because the more the dollar goes down here, it causes the yuan to go up, which causes the value of the yuan to go up, which then makes China's goods more expensive to the world by comparison to America. Not only America, but not only China, but the surrounding nations around China. It causes prices to go up as well over there. Everybody owes America debt, and so when America prints more money, it just makes it harder for them to pay off the debt, and then America basically enslaves Americans to pay off of the debt via labor. It should be rather obvious by now. We're going to talk a little bit about the gas shortages and the meat shortages that are being talked about now, and we're going to look at a little bit of history, and maybe you'll understand a little bit more. So we already talked about companies offering to pay truck drivers. You actually have to do more research to understand why there is a shortage, and of course, the end result, just to know, it's as a result of American policies. CNN talked in depthly about the coming gas shortages that are this was back in April, the end of April. This is actually a really good article to read, surprisingly, from CNN, but it does talk in depthly about what's going on with the truck driver shortage, which is what causes gas shortages, etc. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is the meat shortage. So the meat shortage, I mean, there are a lot of different people that have spoken about this. If you haven't paid attention to individuals, like for example, Ice Age Farmers, a very good YouTuber who talks in depthly about the scam, the ploy, and basically the schemes that are going on, not just in America, but basically throughout the West, of introducing a lower carbon, and the carbon that they're referring to is you. Basically, but when it comes to meat, it shouldn't surprise you where individuals like Bill Gates, of course, this came out on the February 16th, right? So Bill Gates in an article says that rich countries, for example, like America, should be eating 100% synthetic beef. And it shouldn't surprise you that Bill Gates is heavily invested into synthetic meat companies. Very similarly to what I talked about in one of my videos, two videos ago, maybe, where I showed Bill Gates had talked in depthly about how vaccines were his greatest investment, right? In 2019, Bill Gates said that the future of investing is going to be in vaccines. And lo and behold, you can just do a little bit of research and you will see that Bill Gates was heavily invested in companies like Pfizer and Moderna. Nobody had ever heard of Moderna. Moderna had been heavily funded by Bill Gates. And of course, Bill Gates has been funding vaccines for quite some time. So realistically speaking, should you be surprised to see Bill Gates pushing for vaccines? Now, in light of this said article, right, you should not be surprised to see ransomware disrupts meat plants and the latest attack on critical U.S. businesses, right? And so you don't really see America, in terms of the politicians, etc., talking about we're in a state of emergency, we're being under attack. None of that. The politicians just kind of like shrugged their shoulders. They were like, yeah, it happened. What do you want us to do? Sort of speech. You don't really see Joe, he'll put out a post and be like, yeah, someone put out a post that we're going to do some sort of an investigation. It's like, who are you going to investigate when you're the ones who are responsible for it, really? I mean, even when it comes to things, for example, like the pipeline, you do a little bit of research and you'll find that the pipeline that was hacked is owned by Coca-Cola. Now, in terms of the gas and the oil, the attack on oil between the Green New Deal and, we don't need carbon, we need to lower carbon, etc. And then, of course, in my last video, I talked about how, the climate czar, what is his name, Kerry, who Biden put in place of the Green New Deal and things of that having to do with making more things more green, was heavily invested in oil. It should not surprise you. Now, these are the oil futures. Now, the oil futures were down here, obviously post collapse in 2020, and a lot of these people have bought heavily into oil. Right? You just do a little bit of research and you'll find who has been invested in oil. Now, recently there have been numerous attacks on oil refineries, not just here in America, but in places like Iran. You do a research, you'll see more articles talking about this very same thing in India, in India, and as well as Indonesia. In Michigan governor orders closure of pipeline and escalating dispute with Canada. And you might be thinking, well, I don't understand, because this was at the same time. You can look at the date right here, 11th of May. This was not too long after the hack of the Colonial Pipeline. And then shortly after that, the Michigan governor says, I want you to shut down the pipeline that runs from here all the way up to Canada, under the guise of it's a ticking time bomb. Now, this is all to cause gas and oil shortages, so that, like I said before, what you're watching is not inflation. What you're watching is manipulation of the oil market, of the food market, of different indices, and it's for the purpose of basically forcing Americans to pay higher prices. But this shouldn't surprise you that a very similar thing happened back in 2019, in 2009. In 2009, we're going to look at the oil futures again, right? So go back. right here. And so in 2009, there were numerous oil refinery attacks. Or right, this happened in it says fire made worse by oil companies' lapses. And this was the name.
The huge oil blaze in Jaipur remains untamed. Although army soldiers joined firefighters within 2 hours of its start, the fire rages on relentlessly at all the 12 containers of the IOC depot. The IOC says this massive fire broke out after a pipeline valve failed and lots of oil spilled over while being transferred.
The strategies will allow it to burn.
Now, of course, I will leave the links for all of this information for you to do a little bit more in-depth research of your own. Now, of course, this wasn't the only refinery that had fire issues that was in essence where they had burnings of oil refineries. Right in 2009, again, right around the exact same time, on October 23rd, there was an oil refinery here in Puerto Rico. Right, and since 2009, Catano oil refinery fire was a fire that began with an explosion back in October 23rd, 2009, and was extinguished on the 25th at the Caribbean Petroleum Corporation oil refinery and oil depot in Puerto Rico. And that wasn't the only one that happened during that year. Again, that exact same oil refinery we talked about here in this video. And then BP also experiencing oil refinery issues, as well as Silver Eagle oil refinery flash fire and explosion. This took place again November, right? So this one took place in October. This one also took place in October, right? And this one took place in November. Now, when you look at oil prices back, as you can see, that was right around here in September and October. And of course, this was where Americans saw oil go to $100 a barrel. And we're literally witnessing the exact same thing today. And of course, eventually oil fell off. And we're literally watching the exact same thing here, as oil basically has broken out. $65 a barrel is a key point where, in my opinion, oil will continue to rise higher, more than likely hitting $100 a barrel, and Americans will probably see, around $7, especially in places like California, you will probably see things like $7 a barrel. All of this is actually brought on by the American government. This is, in my opinion, when you read all of these articles, it all starts to paint a picture. People look at Dr. Fauci and the Cuomos of the world, and they think that they're the source of the problems. And these individuals are nothing more than the fall guys. They're the henchmen. And what people should be really looking at are the elites in positions of authority, primarily in the American government. I mean, the whole world exports to America, right? And people think that the dollar is going to go south, etc. The dollar is backed by nothing except by U.S. missiles and by the U.S. military. It's why I've always say that for people who back the military and individuals who back the police, you're just literally backing people who are willing to commit crimes against humanity, regardless of the narrative of, I'm a patriotic individual. The reality is that the politicians send you out to kill people for oil, or to kill people for opium, or to keep other nations in check. And so while people might imagine that China is heavily responsible for what's going on, I mean, China sends us their goods for paper that has green ink on it. Who do you really think is in charge?